Pat McAfee Show, the Raiders fire Josh McDaniels, 1.5 years into a 6-year contract. What a disaster. So Josh McDaniels finally fired at like midnight after their loss on Monday Night Football. The Raiders, my goodness. I mean, they just can't get right between the Henry Ruggs situation, but between Gruden's situation, between the McDaniels situation, between Carr getting benched last year, and then now Devontae Adams is disgruntled and basically being held captive. I mean, the team is in complete disarray. Complete disarray. McDaniels is an interesting profile because he's been in the league for a long time, and he's got a lot of opportunities. And he has proven time and time again that he is a bad head coach. Some people would argue that he's a bad offensive coordinator. And he has the ultimate trump card. He has the trump card of, well, I was the offensive coordinator with Tom Brady. I have blank Super Bowls and blank playoff wins, and remember how good the Patriots were. I was there, so thus I have to be good. Before we really get into Pat McAfee's video, I want to show you something that Warren Sharp put out there. Sharp Analytics here, the football analysis. So Sharp has been really anti-Josh McDaniels the entire time. And he's got some interesting stats here. So let's take a look. So McDaniels was hired by the Rams to be their offensive coordinator in 2011. His Rams were the worst offense in the NFL. 32nd in EPA, 31 in yards, 31 in success rate. Okay? Absolutely terrible. So let's keep looking. So these numbers speak for themselves, but another point worth making is how these offenses were worse with McDaniels than they were with prior coaches. Okay? So if you look at pre-McDaniels, a 49% success rate with the Broncos, with McDaniels, 42%, with McDaniels, 39%. Before you can see it here, right? So what he's trying to say, and if you look at the Patriots, right? So without him in New England, the Patriots had 0 setbacks. So 2009 Patriots, no McDaniels. They were 4-1. Then next year, 1-1. The next year, they were 3-2 in success rate and EPA. So you have to wonder with the Patriots, was it all Brady, Belichick, and whoever else? It certainly looks like it. This three-year stretch, they're really, really good. And McDaniels is gone. So McDaniels, 3 years as OC, the Patriots had only 1 year of ranking as a top 2 offense. Granted, his final year before being hired in Denver, Tom Brady was lost for the season. So that is a big asterisk as well. So Brady without McDaniels, if you look at it here, so McDaniels and Brady, the EPA and success are 19, 19, 20, 13, 12, 9. And then with just Brady, the EPA jumps to 5, success 14, EPA jumps to 3, and success on 2. Okay. Brady was able to play to a high enough level to lead a top 5 offense in 2020 and 2021 and win a Super Bowl, but he was number 19 with McDaniels. So the Bucs with just Brady were much better than his year with McDaniels and Brady in 2019. Okay. Let's see here. Let's keep it going. Okay, so McDaniels joins the Raiders. All right. So 2021, this is when the Raiders made the playoffs, right? This is the Gruden situation when they got fired. They had the interim coach. They make the playoffs. McDaniels gets hired. Okay. So Carr goes from completing 68% of his passes to 60%, so an 8% drop. Okay. Then we go to, let's see, we go to some more numbers here. 2022, the Raiders lost 5 games after blowing a 7+ point halftime lead. That's insane. Most in NFL history. Raiders led by double digits at halftime in 5 games last year. They lost 4 of those 5. The rest of the NFL was 84-9. That is insane. When leading by double digits at halftime, the NFL was 84-9. Josh McDaniels was 1 of 5. Nuts. The Raiders had a losing record in games they led by 13 or more points. Okay, that's crazy. I mean, when you look at this and you look at the inefficiency of McDaniels' offenses, and then you look at the bizarro world of how successful the teams were when they dropped Josh McDaniels, it makes you wonder if he's an offensive guru How are those numbers possible? How is it possible that an offensive guru like him can leave and the Patriots get better? He arrives and the Raiders get worse, specifically on offense. We're not talking about worse on defense. We're not talking about any of that stuff, because I know people are going to say, oh, the Raiders had a bottom whatever defense. That has nothing to do with the completion percentage, the success rate, the EPA on offense, all that stuff. So we're talking specifically, this is a guy who's supposed to be good at offense. He's supposed to be an offensive guru. And when you think about how long he's been in the league, it's really saying something. I mean, he's one of those guys who at this point now, I mean, what did it say with the Rams? What was the Rams year? 2011. He was the head coach of the Broncos in 2009. So this guy, we're going on now 15-ish years of McDaniels either being an OC or a head coach. And seemingly, he's been inefficient in each one.
The Las Vegas Raiders here. Just 25 games into a 6-year contract worth somewhere near $60 million. Josh McDaniels has been canned as the Las Vegas Raiders head football coach, and alongside of him, sent packing his GM, Dave Dolph Ziegler. Yeah. Now, I will say that this was certainly surprising to all of us whenever we awoke this morning. A 6-year deal, especially with Mark Davis and how the Raiders kind of have been run, not saying financially, but financially, you would think they would not get out from underneath a $60 million contract with
I've said it a million times. The NFL contracts, money, salary is the most fake fugazi thing in the whole world. Cliff Kingsbury in Arizona signed like a 10-year deal, fired the next season. John Gruden given equity, $100 million, whatever, see ya, fired. Josh McDaniels, 6-year, $60 million, boom, see ya, fired. They're paying McDaniels, they're paying Gruden, they don't care. You know, like the NFL, you hear these contracts, you hear these numbers, you see 10 years, you see $100 million, none of it matters.
$40 million roughly still owed after this season to a head coach. Mark Davis couldn't take it anymore. Now, yesterday, whenever we were asked, does Davante Adams need to command a trade to get the hell out of town? We thought to ourselves, the natural thought would be, are the Raiders going to figure this out over the next couple of years while Davante Adams is on contract? Do we think the Raiders are going to fire the head coach maybe after this season? Maybe fire the GM? And it was almost felt like we were being sports media people, just being dramatic. Like, are they going to fire the GM? Are they going to fire the coach? He's only 25 games into this thing. He's got a 6-year deal. Are they going to do? Mark Davis said, yeah, I am. I'm sick of it. This means that, to me, Mark Davis talked to probably Max Crosby, probably talked to Davante Adams. He said, hey, listen, I'm on your guys' side. I'm not on the coach's side.
Well, you got to remember, too, last year McDaniels was having, like, him and Davis, there was rumors that they kept having closed-door meetings, that McDaniels was in, like, seemingly hot water last year. So this has been brewing. You know, I think the slow start, the inefficiency on offense, how awful Jimmy Garoppolo has been, all of that. The locker room seems to be in total disarray. I mean, Davante Adams is basically crying on the sidelines every week. He seems like he is in hell. You know, everything that happened with Derek Carr and all of that towards the end of last season. If you're Davis, too, you don't have time to wait because you just moved. You just moved to Vegas. You just opened this big stadium. You were in the playoffs a couple of years ago, and you've taken a huge step backwards. If you look at, I mean, the idea that the Raiders won 10 games and they were in the playoffs, that to this is crazy. I mean, right now, the Raiders have this season, have one of the worst offenses in the NFL. And you can't sit there and say it's the roster. You can't sit there and say, oh, well, they don't have anybody. They had the NFL's leading rusher last year, Josh Jacobs. They have one of the best receivers in the NFL, in Davante Adams, who had 1,500 receiving yards last year. They had Derek Carr. That McDaniels decided that didn't work out. So now they have Jimmy Garoppolo, a guy who won 1 million games in San Francisco. They have Michael Mayer, right, a rookie tight end. Defensively, they've got one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. So they certainly have, as Pat McAfee would say, dudes on the roster. And somehow McDaniels has turned this team into a complete laughingstock. They built a brand new Death Star facility to be the biggest laughingstock in the NFL.
We're going to rebuild around you. We're not rebuilding in their vision. Now, if you do recall their vision, Darren Waller,
They're out.
Out of the building.
Sure. See ya.
Derek Carr literally kicked out of the building. You talk about Hunter Renfrow and what has happened with him under this whole thing, pretty much out of the offense. You chit-chat about, what's that? Chandler Jones situation. Josh Jacobs was going to hold out. It's like a lot of the things that have happened with Dave Dolph Ziggler and Josh McDaniels, for them to have the lack of success that they've had, they've made some big swings and done some things to the kind of the core of the Las Vegas Raiders. So they move on now. Ex-player, Big Pierce, Super Bowl champion for the New York Giants, who's an old school guy, I do believe. He is now the interim head coach.
And the last time the Raiders had an interim head coach, they were successful. You know, that's when they went to the playoffs. Was when Gruden it was post the Gruden whole situation here. So, and Pat's right. Like a lot of it is on the field as far as how bad they've been, but a lot of it too is just how disgruntled everybody seems. It seems like they lost the locker room. It seems like the locker room was close to a mutiny, and that's a horrible combination where all you're hearing is that players are pissed and everyone hates everybody and everyone's miserable. Oh, and by the way, we're averaging 13 points a game. Oh, and by the way, we're one of the worst offenses in the NFL. Oh, and by the way, we can't win a game. You know, we're getting embarrassed weekly. You know, so that combination right there is pretty brutal.
Champ Kelly, who none of us know is the interim GM, but congrats to him having the name Champ.
Yeah,
I think he's probably going to bring positive vibes in there. Aiden O'Connell allegedly going to be the starter. And if you look back in history, you think to yourself, after week 8, this guy gets fired. That seems pretty early, not only in a season, but in a 6-year tenure that was supposed to happen. So we dug throughout the history of the NFL. Look at some of these firings. That's going to be tough for me to read out. Okay. 1938, okay? In year 2.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't really fair, though, because you got – I mean, this is an interesting this is weird because of the years, right? Like, getting fired 13 games into week 1 is very different than getting fired 9 games into year 5. You know, like, the only like George Allen, Petrino, and Urban Meyer are the 1-year fires. And that's – like, to get fired in the first year is an unmitigated disaster. It is also interesting to see the Raiders on here quite a few times. You know, the Raiders doing it with Kiffin, and then doing it with Allen, and then doing it with McDaniels. It's pretty wild. It's also nuts to think about Lane Kiffin, how this is 23 years ago. 23 years ago, he was the head coach of the Oakland Raiders. Like, think about how young Kiffin was. That's nuts. Because Kiffin is still considered a young coach. You know, he obviously like a young coach in college. But to think that he was the head coach of an NFL team 21 years ago, pretty crazy. Pretty nuts. But, I mean, yeah, McDaniels, tough. I mean, the fact that he didn't last as long as Dennis Allen, and we know Dennis Allen's one of the worst head coaches in NFL history record-wise, to know that he lasted a year worse than him, tough scenes.
Hugo Besdick was fired after 3 games. Jeez. Listen to this one. 1968, year 7, Joe Collier. 2 games into the season. See you later for the Bills. How about the team formerly known as...
Right, of course.
The Washington... Not saying it, obviously. But it is part of NFL history. Yeah. And George Allen certainly coached for them for 2 preseason games. In his first year, 1978, they said, this guy stinks. Wow. I don't know what they saw. I don't know what the hell happened in these 2 preseason games, but they knew quickly, this guy ain't got it. He ain't winning a Lambeau. Let's get him the hell out of here. 2 preseason games, this guy last. We don't know if he got arrested for murder or what happened, but he was 2 preseason games into his tenure. He got canned. Jack Patera, year 7 over there for the Seahawks. Lane Kiffin in his second year, 4 games in. If you do recall, that got real loud.
Yeah, that was crazy. That was on the tarmac. They left Lane Kiffin like, that was ugly. Kiffin had a couple weird departures with USC and Oakland. He's had a weird career.
Real loud, real like this comes after a USC situation or before a USC situation. Lane Kiffin went through a lot of boom. To find himself at Ole Miss right now, I think they're ranked top 10. I think they're ranked 10th in the country right now. Bobby Petrino in his first year, 13 games it lasted. Now he resigned, so it's not necessary.
That was different. He didn't get fired. He quit. He left a note in the locker room, said, "Hey guys, I'll see y'all never."
A firing, but I do believe the team was going to fight him. So that was kind of a decision made in a firing spot. Dennis Allen, Raiders, after 4 games in his 3rd year. Joe Philbin, his 4th year, 5 games. Hugh Jackson, 8 games in. Urban Meyer, 13 games in a year 1. That was a long 13 games.
Yeah, a lot of stuff happened there.
In our head, like 10 different things just happened.
Yeah.
Oh, he kicked the kicker.
Yeah.
No, he was on the dance floor. Shouldn't have went to the dance floor. Like,
I think that Urban Meyer, in my opinion, Urban Meyer's tenure in Jacksonville is the worst coaching tenure in the history of the NFL. It was the biggest disaster of all time because this was not like, take Petrino out, right? Because Petrino resigned. 1 year, 13 games is so much worse than all the other things. All the other things. To fire somebody 13 games into a contract really says a lot about Urban Meyer.
He got laughed out of the thing. He didn't fly with his team. That was only in 13 games.
Yeah. Crazy. Missed those times.
Those were fun times.
That was a great
Remember
time.
Tebow? Tebow was in there too.
Yeah.
Oh my God! Do you remember what he was going to do to this Jags team too? And he goes down to Jacksonville with the Khan family. The Khan family owns All Elite Wrestling, which is another wrestling promotion.
Oh yeah.
And
I forgot about that.
in his first week down there, he goes, "We're throwing this word elite around too much, way too much. We're going to be on the edge. Okay, we need to be on the edge." Elite, everybody's elite. It's like, well, maybe everything's elite where you are because you were actually on an episode of something called All Elite
Trying
Wrestling.
a guy a laptop.
Oh, I'm going to need to build a new building too. Remember, he wanted to build a whole new town?
Yeah.
I need a new practice facility. I need a new town within Jack's Beach. I need this whole thing.
The craziest thing about Urban Meyer was when he didn't fly back with the team. When they played a game and he left and went and visited his family or something, and the team flew back without the head coach. That's the craziest thing in the world. First season, you finish a game, and imagine the head coach says, "All right, guys, I'll see y'all back in Jacksonville," and he takes off to do something else, to go on vacay.
And then the way that unfolds, I bet you the cons were just like, we could have got this more terribly wrong.
The hell's this guy doing?
13 games, though, he lasted. So congrats to him. Frank Reich, obviously, the writing was on the wall. That was 9 games. Jeff Saturday would go on to be the head coach after him last year.
That was pretty bad,
Matt
too.
Rule got fired after 5 games. Carolina Panthers kind of have that as his MO with the new owner. Remember, Ron Rivera got fired early as well. Whenever they knew they were going to move on from him, Matt Rule, see you later. And then Josh McDaniels in his 2nd year, 8 games into this thing, he is canned. Darius J. Butler, I know an early firing is a good sign to your fan base, like, we ain't putting up with this shit anymore either.
Yeah, I think the team will get a bump. I think the fans will feel a bump. And the question is now, where do you go? Do you go try and get Jim Harbaugh? Do you try and go get a big name coach? Do you go back to Gruden? That seems impossible, right? But do you go get someone like that, or do you take a chance on a coordinator? And what do you think happens to McDaniels? Because McDaniels is a guy who seems like he's bulletproof. He seems like someone will believe that he's a legit offensive coordinator. Someone will believe. It's hard for me to see him getting like a head coaching opportunity again. That would be nuts. But I could definitely see him getting signed on as an OC. And it's wild to think about because of what we just showed with the Warren Sharp stuff. Like, if you really look at it, this is a guy who has failed a lot and has not really shown you a lot of success. So for 20 years in or whatever, to say, you know what? I kind of like what this guy's got going on offensively. You know, like, what team will make that mistake? What team will get him as an OC? It'll happen. I predict Josh McDaniels will be on a staff next year, which is crazy. But he will be on a staff next year. I do not think anyone's dumb enough to make him the head coach. But as an OC, I think he'll be there.
But it is also maybe an early look at who the next person is. Maybe Antonio Pierce gets a real opportunity here to lead this team and see how they do. Mark Davis has done crazier.
He'll get an opportunity if he rattles off like 9 straight wins. If Pierce goes nuts and the team is just flying, he'll get an opportunity. But if they're 500, they'll go in a different direction.
Things. They stick with Devontae Adams on the trade deadline. They stick with Max Crosby. They stick with their guys that they've paid and they want to be around. Now they're turning over the coaching staff and the front office yet again. What does this mean in your eyes, AJ? What are your thoughts?
I mean, they're paying a ton of money to coaches that they've fired, so that sucks, right? How much?
$40 million allegedly over the next 4 years,
They don't
guaranteed.
care.
Josh McDaniels might
They
be a
could care
professional
less.
golfer over the next 4 years, or he will work for free with the New England Patriots. This is a classic Bill Belichick move. We'll let the Raiders pay him $10 million a year, and we'll pay you nothing. You're an intern.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, classic Patriots. They'll pay him $1 salary, and he'll get $10 million from the Raiders, and the Patriots will have him on staff for nothing. I do always wonder this. This is kind of the human element. Well, let's say you're in a job and you just failed for 20 straight years. Somehow you make millions of dollars. And if you know $40 million is coming at you and you're Josh McDaniels, you got to at least think about taking a step back. You got to at least think about, like, you know what? I had a good run, multiple Super Bowls, had all that fun with the Patriots, wild times in Vegas, wild times with the Broncos, Tebow, and whatever else. Maybe I should just chill, collect my $40 million, and just is what it is. It's interesting to me when these coaches get these enormous buyouts for failing, and they say, you know what? I'm going to fail again, and I'm going to fail again. None of them. Ed Orgeron is the only one who, when LSU paid him his buyout, he said, you know what? Cool, I'll see you later. I'm going to the beach. Everyone else just seems to like keep going. They keep trying to be good, even though they haven't been good for 20 plus years.
So do you think this was all right to do in season? Are you a fan of in-season firings like this when it feels like, hey, this is not going anywhere we want to go?
I don't want anybody to lose their jobs ever. Okay.
Yeah.
Now that got written about us earlier whenever we came over here and things happen. Anybody that wants to work, I hope you have a job. We're lacking people with work ethic, so I never want anybody to ever lose a job, especially people that would like to work. With that being said, I'm also a big fan of ownership telling their fans, yeah, I ain't happy with this shit either. You know, and that feels.
I mean, I think in any job, if you have someone who's failing at their job, I think it's okay to replace them. You know, especially if you give them opportunities, like 2 years or whatever. This isn't a month into the job. And there's only 32 of this position in the world. There's only 32 head coaches in the NFL in the entire world. So this is a very rare job. It's not like this is a, you know, whatever, like a accountant where there's hundreds of thousands of accountants and, you know, it's a different ball game. This is one of 32. So when one of 32 is failing in a spectacular level, get rid of them. I have no problem with that. That is the name of the game. You know, that name of the game. Bottom line, if you think someone else can do better, you got to get them out. And as a fan base, you want to see that. You don't want to. The NFL season is a long season for a fan. If your coach is terrible or your quarterback's terrible, it's the same with these position players. If you have a quarterback throwing interceptions and he's tanking your season, you don't say, well, I mean, he wants the job. You know, you don't want someone to lose their job. You say, no, get him out of there. He cannot do the job. He can't do it. Why have everyone suffer just to have someone in a position? Like the NFL and pro sports, high turnover sport, and that's just part of it.
It's like this particular move, because we did see videos earlier in the season where Mark Davis was sitting there, great hair.
Great haircut.
Super cool look. And he just won another world championship.
Yes, he did.
With
Yeah,
the Aces just 2
Yeah.
weeks ago. And he's getting cussed out everywhere he goes because of how the Raiders are. He's thinking to himself, guys, just won another world championship with the Aces. You're welcome. Brought it to the town. Nobody's ever done that. And instead, all he's hearing about is, these Raiders stink, bro. This guy ran Darren Wall. Wanted somebody that he had a lot of trust and faith in to restore the culture that the Colts were, because from what he...
Okay, I don't know what the hell just happened there, but we'll end the video there. Crazy situation. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Big conversation here. If you're a Raiders fan, are you happy with the move? Where do you think McDaniels will land? That's really what I want to get to. Do you think he'll be an OC next year? When the season starts next year, will he be an OC? Will he be a head coach? Will he be in New England? Where will he be? Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next video, ladies and gentlemen. Peace.